Today is the 23rd of October 2014 and we're going on a drive. We're going to be taking a whole bunch of I'm shaking so bad. We're going to be taking a whole bunch of paper to the dump, what's called euphemistically is called in the US a landfill, which is a garbage dump. And we're going to be driving in this, our daily driver. In fact, not only our daily driver, but our only car. It's an A-Class Mercedes. It's 12 years old and has over 200,000 kilometers on it. And we're going to be driving it for a while. It needs some repairs I'll tell you about on the way. I'm going to tell you a story about, or not a story, but I'm going to tell you about how I got interested in cars and some of the history behind my interest in automobiles. So let's get in and get going. We've got a whole car full of old paper and books that we're going to be dumping. It's time to get going. I bought a new camera tripod. I mean automobile mount for the camera. And I hope it's stable. It seems to be well made. It's I guess it's a professional one, made of steel with a rubber suction cup. And it seems to be pretty stable on the windshield. There's a Porsche 924. Don't see many of them anymore. It's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The landfill, it's actually not a landfill, it's a sorting station that we're going to where paper and plastic and metal and refuse of different kinds are separated and then I guess shipped to wherever they can be reused or whatever happens to them. In any case, we're taking, I guess, about maybe not a half a ton, but as much as the car will hold almost, of old papers, scientific reprints of mine, books. I hate to throw away books. I really just don't like, just feels sacrilegious to throw away books, but there's no choice. Nobody's interested in them anymore. I'm not throwing any art books away with beautiful drawings and so on. These are mostly textbooks, some novels, and scientific books that are probably all outdated anyway. Besides, today everybody goes to the internet. I tried to give away a whole bunch of books to a book dealer, and they said, oh, well, you know, if you give them away. I didn't want any money for them. I just wanted to give them away. They said, well, if you make a list of exactly what they are and in what condition they are and who the publisher is and author and year, we'll look through it and tell you which ones we want. Well, sorry. The landfill sounds like a better idea to me. So anyway, we're off, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my interests in cars, in automobiles, how it came to be, and I'm going to intrinsically, as many of you who followed my videos know, I will have to mention my friend Jim. He and I grew up together. We were friends ever since we were 7 years old, and all of our interests in cars developed, we developed together, so to speak. And so I will oftentimes say we, and when I say we, I mean Jim and me. Jim, for those of you who haven't followed my videos, passed away 2.5 years ago. Oh, just stay there, you tractor, you. That's a good boy. Thanks, pal. And I miss him a great deal. We were very close, as I said, since our 7th year, and that meant we were together over 60 years. We grew up. Jim came from Mississippi. He was born in Laurel, Mississippi, and I was born in Hammond, Indiana, on the border to Illinois. I actually lived in Illinois, in Calumet City, Illinois, and Jim moved there when he was 6 years old, I think, and we met in school and became friends to some extent. Later on, I think when we were about 12 or 13, we became really quite close. And we both learned to drive when we were about 14, I guess. Unofficially, with our parents in the car, they would let us sit behind the wheel and learn to use the clutch and the gas pedal and the brakes. Steering wasn't a problem because we'd had tricycles and bicycles. But getting the feel for the clutch and the gas pedal, of course, took some time. And by the time we were, I guess when you're 16, you got a permit or something like that. You could then officially drive with your parents. And as soon as we could, we got our licenses. My father had driven a 1929 Chandler until the late 1930s, and according to him, he loved the car. It was, I think he said it was a V8. I think he really liked that car. It had wooden spoked wheels. I can remember that. I have pictures of it. I'll put up here. But the water pump was constantly leaking. He drove it with a friend of his up Pikes Peak, in fact, in the 1930s. And the water pump packing was always causing problems and was always leaking. So he finally gave up and sold it and bought a Chevrolet, I think in 1939. I'm not absolutely sure. I can't find any pictures of that car. I'm sure there are probably some black and white negatives somewhere, but in the millions or thousands of negatives that I have, I guess I probably won't find it. In any case, he never owned anything but a Chevy after that. The 39 was followed by a 40 something, 46 I think, maybe 47. And then the 55. And it's in the 1955 Chevy Bel Air that I learned to drive the car. I had already driven an MGT TD or TF. I'm not sure anymore. It belonged to a teacher of mine. She let me drive it when I was 14 years old, and I just fell in love with the car. And when I then started driving my dad's 55 Chevy, it felt like driving a tank. I must admit, I didn't like that car at all. I hated the engine. It was a big, heavy, clunky 6-cylinder underpowered for the weight of that car. It was a two-door Bel Air with painted, what did they call it? I call it gray and pink, but I think it was called anthracite and salmon or something like that. I don't remember the exact designations, but in any case, it was a popular color combination at the time and considered to be quite classy, I guess. I won't say any more about it than that. The underpowered 6-cylinder engine and the clunky 3-speed column shift turned me off. I really didn't like that car, and I hated the engine. Whoops. Missed the shift. Okay. This is Alsfeld, which is a place, the closest town to where we live. But I think it's not quite 20,000 people. We're going through a newly constructed area here with where I think quite well-to-do people live. I know that the owner of the Mercedes dealership lives here. Jim, on the other hand, his father, who was a chemical engineer and basically ran a small refinery. They didn't refine gasoline. They refined oil to make asphalt. And many of the roads in our area were covered with asphalt made at Berry Refining Company, and I think it was in Gary, Indiana. And Jim's father knew a little bit more about cars, and he bought a two-door Ford. I think it was, what do they call it? A hardtop convertible or something. In any case, it was not a convertible. It just it didn't have a center post in any case. So it was equipped, however, with a very nice V8 and a let's see, it was a 1957 Ford. Kind of a good-looking car in blue, and with automatic. And although I had learned from my father that Ford was a dirty word, I thought the car was pretty cool, actually. I liked it, especially the 8-cylinder engine that had certainly twice the horsepower of the 6-cylinder in my dad's Chevy. And it was quite quick. And we mistreated that poor car. I have to say, we beat it pretty badly. Jim found out that you could do something. It sounds pretty funny, but I think at the time it probably scared an awful lot of people. He found that if you were going down a small street, for instance, late at night, and you just left it in drive, but turned off the ignition for anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds, and then you turned the ignition on again, gas accumulated in the exhaust system, gasoline accumulated in the exhaust system, and combusted with an enormous explosion. It's a wonder that it didn't blow the muffler off the car. At some point it blew the internals out of the muffler, which we thought was pretty cool because it sounded then a lot better. But Jim would turn the ignition off when the people would be sitting out on their lawn, for instance. This was a residential area with quite nice homes, and he'd drive down these little streets And then people would be sitting out on the lawn, and he'd turn off the ignition and coast, and then turn back on the ignition. And the explosion would just about knock these people off their chairs. Oh, God, I don't know. But anyway, we had a good time. One guy actually, I think he reported us, if I remember correctly, he actually did report us to the police, and the police came by, but they couldn't do anything because they looked at the car and it was completely stock. There was nothing about it or anything. And Jim's father was quite angry that they would bother him about it. There was nothing. There was no way to make any noise other than it wasn't loud or anything. So, but anyway, that was the kind of bad kids we were, doing stuff like that. And I drove my dad's Chevy. I mistreated it, but mainly just because I was so angry at it being so underpowered, and it really did. It handled like the Queen Mary. It really wasn't much fun to drive. And Jim got tired of his dad's Ford after a while too. And although I'm not sure I can get the exact order of these things together, the cars we had together, I know that at some point he convinced his dad to buy a new car. And his dad said, "Oh, I don't know what to buy, and they're expensive," and so on and so forth. So Jim said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll take care of that." So we called up the competition division. I don't remember if that's what it was really called, but something like that. It wasn't called race division, but competition division, I think, of Pontiac. Of Pontiac up in Michigan, and explained to them that we would like to have a car that had had to be suitable for driving on the street, but it should be hot. That's all there was to it. It should be hot. And if they wanted to sell a car, if they really wanted to sell a car, they're going to have to meet our specifications for it. That's all there is to it. So we got a very nice fellow on the phone. His name was Gary. Oh, I can't remember. I remembered it a couple of days ago, but I can't remember now. Gary Wilson or Wilkins. Anyway, he said, "Okay, boys, I understand the situation. We'll set you up with something that'll that you won't be ashamed of at the drag strip." And what we wound up with was the lightest Pontiac of that year, 1959, a Catalina two-door, also without a center post. I don't remember what that was called. I have a feeling it was called a hard-top convertible, but that may be just imagination. In any case, again, it was not a convertible. It had a hard top, and it just didn't have a center post. And I have pictures of it, and I'll show them to you here. The Catalina was equipped with a competition suspension, although that's questionable what it meant. It had supposedly better brakes. However, the main feature of it, of course, was the engine. And I don't remember many details about the engine, aside from the fact that it was called a tri-power. It had 3 two-barrel carbs. And it had a hot cam that idled very lumpily, and it had solid lifters. It didn't have hydraulic lifters, and they made a racket.